Hi, I'm Mrs. Voorhees.
Does anybody know who this bitch is?
Friday the 13th.
Hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're having a good one. I'm Nick, and today we're finally starting the Friday the 13th review series. Yes, welcome to the very first one. I'm excited. This is a franchise I'm very close to. It's probably the one I rewatched the most out of all the other big horror franchises out there. And I am not alone reviewing this series. This is going to be a collaboration with Goodreel Hunting, Filthy Dan's film discussion, Moser movie reviews, and review and rankings with Robbie Sobel. All of their channels will be down in the description. I'll put links down there, so go check out their reviews. They will be out the same day as mine, every Friday, starting from Friday, May 28th, all the way to August 13th. We will be coming out with one of these Friday 13th reviews every single Friday, so don't miss it. Plus, every Friday night after our reviews, make sure to go on over to House of the Living Dead's channel. They'll be doing watch parties over on their channel to all the movies we're reviewing on the same night, so it's good stuff. Go on over and check them out as well. So guys, I'm real excited. Let's just get right into this. So Friday the 13th was released in 1980 and stars Adrienne King and Betsy Palmer and was directed by Sean S. Cunningham. So this is one of the entries in this franchise that I've grown to love more and more over the years. It's definitely one I rewatch quite often. Like I may have seen it like 8 times in the last 12 months. So before even doing this review, I was taking down notes before watching the movie, and I pretty much covered everything before rewatching it. I can basically recite line for line at this point. Unfortunately, the first time I've seen this movie, I already knew the big twist, who the killer was. I've seen Scream before this one, unfortunately, so that kind of ruined it for me a bit. But we'll get into the twist and the whodunit aspects of this film a little bit later. First, let's talk about the story itself. The story was written by Victor Miller, and he was basically told, go write a film similar to Halloween style. So he went out, watched Halloween, and this is where we get the whole rip-off of Halloween. Everybody says that Friday the 13th is just a rip-off of Halloween. And while that could be true, it's kind of taken out of context. Just looking at Halloween and Friday the 13th side by side, they're not an identical rip-off or nothing. What they mean is they ripped off the formula, as in you get a group of young adults or teens in a situation where they can't really get help, and they're drinking and having sex and such, while someone goes around and picks them off one by one until we're left with essentially the final girl and the killer. So in that respect, yeah, it did rip off Halloween, but just like the formula, the story itself is much different. This is a whodunit, which Halloween wasn't. There's enough here that they changed that makes it stand on its own, but you could definitely say the formula was ripped off, and it was a low-budget movie that garnered a ton of money, millions of dollars, just like Halloween did. So it was successful in that aspect. So getting into the basic plot of this film, it's essentially about Camp Crystal Lake, which was shut down due to murders that happened in the past. People tried reopening it, but there was always a problem, whether it be a problem with the water, or there was fires that were started, or it always seemed to have a curse on it. A man named Steve Christie bought the camp and the location, and he plans on fixing it up and reopening it. He hires this group of young adults to come and help him renovate and be counselors. And throughout the runtime, one by one, these characters are getting killed off at the camp by an unknown assailant. Now, you see, that's what I mean. There was a formula there. And I understand what they mean with the Halloween ripoff thing, but too many people take that out of context and think that everything about this film is a ripoff. The characters, the setting, everything's different, guys. So getting into the story a little deeper, the first character that we kind of latch on to is Annie. She's on her way to the camp, and she is just such a likable character. Her attitude is so great. She's literally hitchhiking to her new job. So she's a worker. She's committed. She looks like she loves to help people. She ends up running into the townspeople just outside of the woods where the camp is, and they're all telling her that camp's cursed. She runs into Crazy Ralph, who's like the harbinger of doom. They got a death curse, and he's great. Anyway, all these townspeople and that don't really seem to spook her. So she ends up getting a lift by one of the truck drivers. He can only drive her so far. And then the last person she gets picked up by when she's hitchhiking is an unknown assailant. We never do see who gets to pick her up, but we know they're driving a Jeep. And we soon find out that they're bad. So she jumps out of the vehicle, eventually running into the woods to get killed by this unknown assailant. And it's just so unfortunate because Annie is just so likable that they kind of pull the rug from out under you and be like, we're killing her off right away. It was like a trick, almost like Psycho with Marion Crane, how you figured she was your main lead the whole movie, but no. Like, wow. So then the movie takes us to the camp where all the counselors are arriving and Steve Christie is getting them to fix up different things. And this is a big complaint people have for this movie is the characters. I feel like they're very likable. They're very entertaining. They all have their own personalities. They don't have arcs, and they're not setting them up to have these crazy storylines. They're just there to get killed, yes. But I love spending time with these characters nonetheless. First off, I'll talk about Steve Christie. He was the one fixing up the camp and hired these people to come. He's a creep. Like, from the way he looks to the way he acts, he's something off about him. And he's one of the red herrings in this movie. Since this is a whodunit, he kind of stands out, especially since he drives a Jeep. And he's giving all sorts of weird vibes to Alice, like touching her face and that. And you can tell she doesn't really want it. And it just feels creepy. Going through some of our other characters, we got Brenda, who is my personal favorite. She has leader written all over her. She seems fun and can party, but she knows when to be serious. And she seems to be willing to risk her life to help others. In an instant, she jumps in the water to save Ned when he's faking drowning. When she hears the voices at one part in the movie of a little kid needing for help, she goes out in the pouring down rain looking for him. Like, she is a great character. Yeah, Brenda's really the whole package. She's smart, she's funny, and she's gorgeous. She really is everything. Next up, we got Marcy. She's with Jack. Her character is very likable as well. She's pretty funny. She's spunky. Marcy's boyfriend is Jack. I feel like, yeah, he's probably the more generic character in this film. There's not much to him, aside from being played by Kevin Bacon. And he does get a sweet-ass kill. We got Ned. He's like the clown. He's very entertaining. He's not very responsible. He's probably the one that you wouldn't want in charge. We got Bill, who hangs around with Alice a lot in the second half of the film. He's great. He does everything she says. She's like, kill the snake. And he kills it, and he doesn't even look like he was up for it. Like, you look at his face, he was like terrified of killing that snake. He goes out and fixes the generators and shit without even hesitating. Like, the nicest dude ever. And finally, we got our final girl, Alice. Now, Alice is very much a serviceable character. I actually feel she's the weakest out of the girls. Like, she's my least favorite, probably. Not to say that she's bad in any way. It's just that I just like the other characters' personalities and that more. But there's nothing wrong with Alice. She is still a survivor, a fighter, which leads me to the final act of the film, where she's the last one left, and she's like tying up the door and stuff, and she's going in survival mode. And then this vehicle pulls up outside, and she goes out to see if it's help. And that's when our main villain shows up, Pamela Voorhees, and she's played by Betsy Palmer beautifully. She's just this old innocent woman that shows up, and you don't think nothing of her, and she's very kind. She comes in, talks to Alice, explains that she used to be the cook there and that, and then she kind of snaps. You realize it was her son that drowned all those years ago, and it was her that did all the murders and ruined the water and started the fire so the camp would never open again, because she was suffering from the tragedy of losing her son. And when she starts explaining about her son Jason and that, you can see her like starting to snap. She's pretty much has like a personality disorder at this point, where she's like coming in and out of her and Jason, where you can see her change. She's like, kill her, mommy, kill her. And it's his acting is done so well. The fighting part where her and Alice are actually fighting is a little hokey at times, but it's okay. Again, it's serviceable, but it's not the best final fight in the series, that's for sure. But her acting skills, like the dialogue in that, is great. Just not so much the fighting. And we get that sweet, sweet decapitation with Alice and the machete. taking out Pamela's head, and it looks so great. I love how the hands are there and the blood squirting out and that. And you get the hands. They're little hairy palms because it's not actually played by Betsy Palmer. It's played by a man, but nonetheless, it looks great. Now, even though Betsy Palmer was great in the role, things just don't add up. This is set up as a whodunit, but it was not executed properly at all. We don't see Pamela Voorhees the whole movie until the very end, so she's not even a suspect in our minds at all. Like, we don't even know who she is. They give us red herrings, like the cop that shows up. That seems like a little wacky at the first. We get Crazy Ralph, but that doesn't add up at all because he's riding a bicycle, and once you find out that the killer's in a Jeep, you're like, the only other person is Steve Christie. But yet again, they show you Steve Christie at the diner while killings are going on, so it can't be him. And it's like, nothing that you're showing us adds up. None of these red herrings. And then Pamela shows up, and we're supposed to be amazed. And see, like I said, I already knew the twist going into this film, so I wasn't tricked. But what I would really like to know was people tricked in 1980? Were people's minds blown? I have a hard time to put myself in that situation because I wasn't there, you know? And when you already know the twist in that, it doesn't hit you as hard. And finally, after our big fight scene, we get the big jump scare with the canoe. Alice is in the water. Everything feels so peaceful. The music is beautifully done. It's set up in a way the credits are about to roll. The cops show up. She's in the boat. Everything's so nice. And there's no way anything else is going to happen. And then out of nowhere, little Jason pops up and hauls Alice in. And you're like, what the fuck? It's literally one of the biggest jump scares in horror history. It has to be top 5, I would say. Even though it's essentially a ripoff of Carrie. They mentioned they seen Carrie and they're like, that's a cool little ending jump scare. We need something like that. But it just works so well in this movie, and you don't see it coming at all. And that's the way jump scares are supposed to be. Then after all that, Alice wakes up in the hospital, and it was all apparently just a dream where she seen Jason, where that actually never happened. The cops just hauled her out of the water, and there was never a little boy. So she says, so he's still down there. And I thought that was just a really great way to wrap up this film. So this being a really early slasher film from 1980, the slashers were very new at the time, and they didn't really focus a lot on the kills either back then. This was still very new, so this movie being as gory and graphic as it was a real shocker. And they really borrowed things from like Italian cinema and that, who has already been doing this for a few years with like their more giallo films. But Tom Savini just absolutely killed it with this one. The kills are all great. We do get some off-screen kills, but we get enough great on-screen kills that it makes up for it. I mean, 2 of the best kills in the franchise are in this one being Marcy getting the axe to the head. It just looks so real. That's a rubber axe, and you could never tell. And the reason for that is that when the axe goes up and hits the light, you hear it hit. It sounds real. So when it goes into your head, your brain thinks it's still a real axe and not a rubber axe. And yeah, the kill looks great with the blood coming down and that, and it looks really real. Another great kill in this film is Kevin Bacon's death, Jack, where he gets the arrow through the throat while he's sleeping, or while he's on the bed anyway. And the blood drips on him, and he goes to check, and poof, comes right out in the front with the blood spurting out. They had malfunctions on that kill too, so he had to blow the blood through a tube to get it to work, but it totally worked. It looks great, and it's 2 of my favorite kills in the whole franchise. Just the blood in this movie looked really good too. Tom Savini, on his way to make this movie, stopped in and found out the right formula to make blood, because his blood was never coming out the right color before. He went and seen, I don't remember the name, but some legend in practical effects, and he told him to add green, so much green into your red, so many drops per gallon, and that's how we got the great blood in this film. And it's really top-notch practical effects. We also get great atmosphere in this movie. I think it's some of the best atmosphere in the entire franchise as well. It's raining a lot in this film at night, so right there you lose a lot of your senses of hearing and seeing. So that is an advantage for the killer for sure, and it adds more terror. There's a scene I mentioned earlier with Brenda where she's hearing like, help me, mommy, help me. When she's in the cabin, she hears a little kid crying outside for help. and she goes out in the pouring down rain with just her flashlight or whatever, looking for this kid that is not really there, just to get killed. This is another reason why I love Brenda. But yeah, that scene, the atmosphere and the mood set in it is perfect. It's chilling. And just the camera work itself, sometimes you're, as the killer, you're watching them through branches and stuff, and it just makes everything more mysterious and more creepy. And another thing that adds to all the atmosphere and mood is the score to this film. The great Harry Manfredini made the score for this, and it's very reminiscent of Psycho. It shares a lot of aspects of it, but it's definitely tweaked enough to stand on its own. You add in that little ma, ma, ma. It's so unique, even though a lot of people go they think it's something totally different when it's supposed to be kill, 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 mom, mom, or whatever, but they make it ki, ma, ma, ma. And it's just genius. Also, the music change you put in for the jump scare at the end too, how it got all light and happy and that, it's such a good trick. So guys, I know I talked a lot about the positives mostly in this film. I'll give you a few negatives here before I wrap things up, because it's not a perfect film. I do have a few issues with this film, one being the pacing. Throughout, the pacing is fairly good, aside from the last quarter, I'd say, of the film. Right before Pamela Voorhees shows up, my pacing issues pretty much lie with the scenes where we're only left with Alice and Bill. Things just seem to drag on and not much seems to happen. It really feels like filler. He goes, sees if he can fix a generator and different things, and there's a lot of times where we're just there with Alice, like just sitting there, wandering around slowly, and just not really knowing what to do, and it's kind of a time waster. Another little negative in this is the whodunit aspect. Like I already said, they don't give you enough Pamela throughout the film to even make her a suspect. Like, she should have at least been in more of the film. Also, the red herrings didn't really add up. All the ones they gave us, it's like, well, it can't be them, can't be them. So, yeah, the whodunit aspect wasn't handled very well, I don't think. But I also wasn't there in 1980 at the time to see how the big twist reveal would have happened without having any prior information to this franchise. Because like I said, going into this, I already knew the twist. The final act fight scene with Pam and Alice, like I said, the dialogue's great and the acting, but the fighting itself could have been choreographed a little better, I think. Don't get me wrong, though, I do love that sweet decapitation at the end. And the only other thing, guys, is probably, the plot's fairly basic. We don't get too much story going on. Yeah, they're pretty much there to get killed off, but that was the whole point at the time, so I don't fault it too much for that. Aside from those few negatives though, this is a great slasher with some cool kills, enjoyable characters, and it was a great way to kick off this franchise. Even though this film stands perfectly good on its own, it doesn't need the other films to stand up tall. It actually works better on its own, to be honest, because the sequels ruin the lore of this film. So my rating for this slasher, I'm going to have to give this a 7.5 out of 10. It's very good. It's definitely worthy of anybody's horror collection, and it's a must-have if you are a true horror fan. Well, that's it for this review, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to let me know down below how you would rate this film and a few of your positives or negatives, why. And I'm excited to continue on this review series. This is, like I said, a very important franchise to me, and especially some of these later sequels we're going to get to. Also, don't forget to check out those channels I mentioned at the first. Their links are down in the description below, guys. Go sub them and check out their reviews as well, which will be dropping the same day as mine. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for watching.